In our last episode, we covered best practices for deploying and using cloud monitoring. Today, we'll start looking at best practices that you can use to get the most value out of cloud logging. We'll cover how to ingest and store logs, and we'll cover the best ways to query logs and manage logging costs in our next episode. Welcome to Engineering for Reliability with Google Cloud. Before we can do anything with logs at scale, our services need to create them, and they need to be ingested in cloud logging. We covered the sources of logs in Google Cloud in the previous episode, but let's quickly review. There's nothing you need to do to control how logs are emitted from the platform and network. But when writing your own logs, there are some best practices you should follow to get the most value out of that data. This is where structured logging comes in. Consider a log entry that looks like this, where the entire payload message is in a single text payload field. If you want to get any data out of that field, you have to use regular expressions or other string processing methods. Using a structured logging approach like this to create log entries with a JSON payload field that then has nested fields under it allows you to query and analyze log data much easier. Every field within JSON payload can be used to search and query logs, just like other fields. You can even add it to the Logs Field Explorer to enable easily grouping and searching by that field later. But how do you get your application logs to look like that? If your logs are written by the Cloud Logging or the Cloud Apps agents, use one of the supported parsers to emit structured logs, or write your own parser if needed. If you're using the Cloud Logging API, send the full log entry structure with a JSON payload. Finally, if you're using either the Cloud Logging library or a third-party logging library in your code, make sure you're using them in a way that emits structured logs. We'll link to the documentation for each of these in the episode notes. Writing logs in a way that allows you to make the best use of the data in them is great, but what's the best way to store them to balance security, retention, and access? Let's have a look at log centralization, configuring retention, managing access, and using exports. First, keeping your logs in a central place helps you manage all your logs consistently and efficiently. We talked about using log buckets in the previous episode, but remember that for each cloud project, billing account, folder, and organization, cloud logging automatically creates 2 log buckets, required and default. You can create additional buckets and configure log syncs that send logs from multiple projects to those buckets. It's often advisable to do this for audit logs as an example. Your business needs and requirements will likely govern how long you need to retain logs for. You can configure the retention period for any user-defined log bucket and also for the default log bucket. Simply edit the bucket under log storage and set your preferred retention period, up to 10 years. You can also control where the logs in the bucket are stored. You also have the option to set the location to global if you don't need to specify where your logs are physically stored. There are 2 mechanisms you can use to control access to logs and buckets. The first one is via IAM permissions. We'll link to the detailed guide in the episode notes, but a user will at least need the logging viewer role to be able to read logs in the project. The second mechanism to control log access is log views, which provides you with an advanced and granular way to control access to the logs in your log buckets. For example, consider a scenario in which you store all of your organization's logs in a central project. In this case, you might want to control which projects different users can view logs from. Using custom log views, you can give one user access to logs only from a single project, while you give another user access to logs from all the projects. Finally, you may need to export logs to a third-party system, such as Splunk. You can do that using a push-based method through the Splunk HTTP event connector, or a pull-based method using the Splunk add-on for Google Cloud Platform. We covered best practices for ingesting and storing logs in cloud logging, and controlling log access, retention, and exports. I hope these recommendations help you keep your services reliable and your users happy. In our next episode, we'll tackle best practices for analyzing logs and managing logging costs. Thanks so much for watching today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to never miss out on more Engineering for Reliability with Google Cloud. See you soon.